The people we were working with in the warehouse had absolutely no idea what GS1 was or what GTIN is. And then after 2 years, we finally found out who to talk to. And it turns out they have a whole floor in their headquarters doing nothing but working with GS1, having the whole backend of their supplier system being based on the GS1 structure. So that is a bridge we need to build, I think, between suppliers, between buyers on the retail side, but also the logistical people on the retail side, the data management people on the retail side. They all have their own view on the world, and we somehow have to bring that together so that they all can benefit from the same data quality.
Hello and welcome to the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US, a podcast in which we explore the mind-bending world of global supply chains, covering topics such as automation, innovation, unique identity, and more. I'm your co-host, Reid.
And I'm Liz.
And welcome to the show. Hello, everyone. Today we have two great guests. We have Gasper calling in from Atlanta, Georgia, and we have Ries calling in from Austria. Both are from Knapp. And if you're not familiar with Knapp, they've been around for quite some time. Actually, the company was started in 1952. And in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about warehouse automation and the importance of data quality. There's so much more to this than I ever thought. And I was really blown away by the insights that they shared in the importance and the challenges of automating your warehouses. And they shared some real examples of companies that have made mistakes and companies that are overachieving. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the conversation.
Ries, Gasper, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. I know that we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects of data quality, but before we dive in, would you all introduce yourselves and the organization? Ries, I'll hand it to you first.
Thank you very much, Liz. It's a great pleasure being here. I am a software product manager at a company called Knapp, and we make warehouse automation.
Yeah, and I'm Gasper, also with Knapp, based in our headquarters, our U.S. headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. And I've been in the industry for about 10 years, the warehouse automation industry, that is, and now doing business development for software products in the space.
I know we're going to jump into data quality here, but before we jump into data quality, can you just give a little bit? I'm pretty familiar with Knapp and have seen your evolution over the years, which has been pretty wild to me. But before I was introduced to you, I'm like, is it Knapp? I didn't know how to pronounce it. I didn't know where it was. If you wouldn't mind, just for our audience, just a little more background on the company, because you're a large organization, global, and been around for quite some time. And I would say that a couple of big companies have really made you popular lately in the automation space within warehousing, but it's been a long journey as well.
It has been, Reid. Thank you very much. We're still a family-owned company, Austrian-based. So Knapp is actually the last name of the family who founded the company in 1952. The first machines we actually made were donut filling machines. So that's where we come from. That's a strong point.
Donut filling machines?
Donut filling machines. Yes, that was the
Boston
first
cream,
invention.
please.
That was the first invention of our founder. But yeah, over the years, we've done more and more in warehouse automation, doing a lot in healthcare sector, and lately growing into food retail, general retail, fashion. We're pretty broad in this whole space. We got about almost 8,000 people first working worldwide, over 60 countries that we operate in. We've got almost 2,000 people working only in software development, more than 2,000 people in customer service, which in our opinion is a very important thing of the whole automation part. So it's not just, we're not just offering a little piece of the automation. We always offer complete solutions, and that accompany our customers for 15, 20 years at least. So it's an incredibly interesting company to work for. We're doing more than 2 billion euros in turnover every year. From that, we invest roughly about 80 to 100 million euros in, research and development.
I've seen the outskirts, and it's like, when you see that car you've never seen before, and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, right? Or that color or something. And you all have been at a lot of conferences over the last 5 years that I've seen in the say, logistics space more and more, warehouse logistics. But we're going to come back to this. I love the fact that you stated 2,000 people in software and an additional 2,000 people in customer service in an 8,000 person company. It's a great balance. And I come from an IT side, so Liz knows I'm going to geek out on this, but let's just talk about data quality. You're a robotics company. You have 2,000 people in software. Why is data quality so important to you? And what are some of the basics of data quality? Because saying data quality, when you really get into it, it's like saying transportation. Is it a walking stick, a skateboard, a boat, a Learjet, a car? There's lots of transportation. There's lots of data quality.
We're selling large scale solutions, and that's another word for saying they're really expensive, right? It's a huge investment that companies are making into automation, and that can be a few $1,000,000, but we have done systems that one site is hundreds of millions of dollars. And there's an expectation that they're going to get a return on investment. There's an expectation that the equipment is going to be working and that it's going to have high availability and uptime. And in order to achieve that, obviously, there's a lot Knapp can control as far as having the equipment engineered to a high standard. And of course it is. But then there's other things that are influential as well. And data quality is a big part of that. So I think for a lot of companies, they're saying, okay, we spent a lot of money here and we want to get the maximum value out of this investment. So we need to make sure that the data that we're feeding in is going to allow these systems to operate and function the way that they should. And so it's a focal point for Knapp because we want to make sure that our customers who've put their trust in us, that we can also help ensure that they're going to get what they paid for.
I couldn't have said it better, Gasper. Fantastic. I am going to add a few little thingies, though, if you allow. So he's absolutely right, and that is indeed the problem. And if you're looking at a data quality point of view from us, it's not just having the correct data, like is the dimension indeed 5 inches or not, but also complete data. Do we have all the attributes, all the properties of the item that are necessary to run it through automation? Because I guess that's where it becomes interesting. If you talk to a lot of people about data quality, they go like, yeah, my dimensions and my weight are wrong. And that's where they literally stop thinking about data for the warehouse. Whereas if you're looking at an automated picking robot or an automated depal robot, they need 20, 30, sometimes over 60 attributes in order to run properly. And these are not attributes that you would typically get from your suppliers. So not typically something that people would put into the GS1 database, for example. Part of it is, but not everything. So here we are struggling in the warehouse with two topics. On the one hand, we get data from an ERP system that is, first of all, not complete for automation. So we have to add attributes. And second of all, and a lot of times, unfortunately, isn't correct enough for automation. Why am I saying correct enough? If a dimension is off by 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch in a manual warehouse, nobody's going to notice. It's not going to affect your packing density. It's not going to affect your warehouse density or anything. But if the robot thinks I still have 1/2 an inch to put something next to that and then runs into that product with 2 tons of force, then everything's broken. So there it becomes very important.
That is so interesting. And this is the nuance of the whole big picture. You mentioned ERP systems, which have been around for a long, long time, and they're always being updated. Coming from this IT space and working in data centers when it was, no kidding, mainframes, and then into cloud and then virtual servers and all of this, it's always changing. It's always morphing. But software needs to change too. We're seeing this in real time at all different angles. Is it easy for you to work with these ERP companies to have these conversations to then get them to add more fields and then get their clients, your mutual clients, to put more data in so that it can be quicker onboarding going forward? Do those conversations happen at all?
They do, but they often stop relatively quickly. So what we obviously can do with our software environment, which is called KiSoft, which stands for Knapp Intelligent Software, we are used to connecting to ERP systems, or hosts as we call them, because they send the orders, but they also send the master data they have. We then have to enrich the master data in order for it to feed the robots properly. There is very often very little interest in getting that data back into their ERP system. because adding attributes in an ERP system easily has a price tag of 5 digits, right? Well, not just stores, but also changing an ERP system to add something to your interface is going to get expensive. Maintaining that then through the system as well is expensive. So what we literally have done, we've created an additional environment where next to your, let's say, marketing data or your legal information about allergens or something like that, or your price information, which is typically stored in a PIM system, we would then store in an automation system, automation master data system, that you then can also use to transfer data from one warehouse to another. Because that's something that we've also seen in the past and is still going on, is that each warehouse takes in these additional attributes and then raises the quality of it. But because they can't send it back to the ERP system, or because they're not using the GTIN as the unique identifier, but their own in-house SKU numbers, they can't exchange it between warehouses because the same product might have different SKU numbers in different warehouses. Not always, but might happen. That is really a problem as well. So we're trying to tackle that topic as well, so that it's very easy to get the data. You can get high quality data, or at least high enough for automation, and then also transfer it throughout the organization. But it's not typical that people add 30, 40 automation attributes into their ERP system because they don't really need it anywhere else. So that would be a lot of cost for very little benefit throughout the whole organization.
That's great insight that I was really not aware of. And it makes a lot of logical sense to just kind of have this additional kind of in its own little sandbox to be able to be agile and flexible and move in and out.
It is. And I mean, it's very interesting, a little offside story here, but we were working with a large retailer in the States. And when we started working with them, I knew about GS1 because I worked for the food retail industry for a while. And I said, can we talk to your people who are working with GS1 so we can get data directly from the GDSN and literally see how much we can use for the automation? And they're like, GS what? And I'm like, yeah, GS1. And they went like, no, we don't work with GS1. And this is a huge retailer in the States. So I was pretty much 100% convinced that they are working with you guys.
Yeah, that just the department didn't know.
The people we were working with in the warehouse had absolutely no idea what GS1 was or what GTIN is. And then after 2 years, we finally found out who to talk to. And it turns out they have a whole floor in their headquarters doing nothing but working with GS1, having the whole backend of their supplier system being based on the GS1 structure. So that is a bridge we need to build, I think, between suppliers, between buyers on the retail side, but also the logistical people on the retail side, the data management people on the retail side. They all have their own view on the world, and we somehow have to bring that together so that they all can benefit from the same data quality.
I love that story. It's something we run into all the time.
And from the CPG side too, I worked for several large CPGs in my life.
I wasn't lying. God, thank God.
When you start talking about master data and GS1, it's so siloed. And so I think you make such a good point of bridging that gap, because those organizations within the organization can get so much benefit from having that information and not doing it over and over and over again. I had a question for you, going back to the master data. When you get data from your customers, are you verifying that information? Then if it's off, you go back to them. And I wonder if they update their systems.
So we verify everything that hits the dock, because if you don't, you might actually damage your automation and then becomes very expensive very quickly. So you typically do that. In the past, most of our customers did not want to have that verified information back into their system, because very much of our systems, but also from our competitors, were black boxes. And it is something we addressed over the last couple of years. We created an environment that is completely transparent, that shows how these attributes are measured, how they are calculated. So the customer has full insight on what's going on. And this actually motivated a few of our customers to, for the first time in their history, allow data from an automated side to go back into their ERP system. But these are baby steps.
And actually, we're even looking to get further up in the design and warehouse design process to be able to say, before you even implement the automation, let's go in and start to analyze what you guys have and fix that. Because we're going to make design assumptions based off of that master data as well. We're going to size the system based off that data. And we're going to make a lot of decisions based off what you have today. And if it's wrong, then you might have made mistakes in what you've actually put together for a solution. So not only do we want to go in and make sure that it's staying up to date on systems that are up and running, but we want to make sure that we're making designs that make sense too, because that their starting point is often not where it needs to be in order to have a good solution.
That is so true. Just to give you an example, every one of our customers, when we ask them to give us their order data and the master data to do the first calculations, they say, oh, our data is perfect. And then you get an Excel sheet with master data in it, and 50% has dimensions and weight of 1, 1, 1, 1. And then our engineers go like, okay, so how big should the tray be? How much can I put in there? I don't know. So we're going to add 5%, 10%, 15% on top of that, the price that we normally would calculate as a risk factor because we don't get the right data. Absolutely true.
Yeah, it sounds like bad data can cause automation issues to the packaging itself, right? Because you're bonking, that's my technical term for the day, I guess, into each other. If, for Ries, your half-inch example, and then you're making bad assumptions going into a project. Those are three things that you guys just talked to. Are there others?
Well, not a good example, I think, is to use a buzzword, because you're going to need that, right? This artificial intelligence, for example, right? So we have artificial intelligent vision systems. I heard one of your previous podcasts on one of the startups you were talking to. They also did something with vision technology. I think Silas was talking about that. We do this in an operational way with picking robots. So the picking robot can actually see where it should pick and where it should put it, but also it can learn through these vision systems. If a pair of socks with a banderole around is a perfect example. If it starts trying to pick it up or suck it up on the tissue side, it won't work because it can't get a vacuum, but then it comes on the banderole and then it learns, I got to look for the banderole. So the next time it immediately goes for the banderole. So that is AI for you. These guys, and my colleagues, great colleagues, said basically from the beginning, we don't need your software. We don't need your additional attributes. We're fine because we can learn everything. That is absolutely true. But now they figured out that if they would get more information, if they would get upfront information, literally saying this is a product with a banderole around it, then the robot would, for the first time, start looking for the banderole and not trying to trial and error. So you would probably save something like 30 to 60 seconds with the first pick and also in the learning process. Now, that doesn't sound like much, right? 30 seconds doesn't sound like much. But in our warehouses, we typically move like 200,000 products a day. So saving 30 seconds could really run into the hundreds and thousands of dollars. That is AI for you. AI is fantastic. It's great. And I'm sure that for a lot of applications it's the future, but it's still rubbish in, rubbish out. Or in a more positive way, if I can feed my AI with fantastic information, it will learn quicker, it will learn better, and it will work better.
I'm so juiced up on this. This is like, I really geek out on it because you just nailed it. When people at a single threaded 30 seconds is not a big deal. Times 30 seconds by 200,000 orders in a week, you can't fit it in. You just can't fit it in. And so this is where it's like, I'm also a car buff. So like the Formula One stuff, they're really cutting edge and pushing this edge is amazing. We talked with a company many years ago. I won't mention their name, but they're in the automation for the grocery business and kind of micro distribution centers. And they were talking about the use of standards, be any standard, okay? But having contextual understanding of the data you're getting in, to your point, Ries, not only makes all of this work a bit better, but you don't need the 5 to 15% increase to the installation charges. We don't need the extra time. It was reducing installation costs and time periods because they knew the contextual understanding of the data that was coming in. And they were dealing with grocery stores of a chain. So take any major chain that you shop at, right? Across the globe, right? And what they were showing was each grocery store in the chain was its own snowflake. And that was the challenge of implementing an automated system, was that they had to customize each store. They still saw major benefits, but the adoption and rollout ended up being 4 times longer. Are you guys seeing things like that?
I've for sure seen that. I mean, we have customers where there's multiple sites in their network. Some of them Knapp controlled, some of them are manual, some have competitor equipment in them, and they also have their own their own data, and their own master data at those sites aren't even communicating with each other, which brings in a whole new set of issues. And so that's, I mean, honestly, it's exactly why we're talking with GS1. It's why we're here, right? Is we think that if some of these attributes and considerations are promoted as standard, then retailers, manufacturers, everybody in the end is going to be a lot better off and a lot more successful. Automation is only going to increase, right? It's not that high of a percentage of warehouses are automated today. In 10 years, it's going to be higher, and in 20 years, it'll be higher than that. And sooner rather than later, we have to put standards in place to ensure that this product can be handled appropriately.
I've mentioned this in countless podcasts and even today, but my background coming from IT, back in the day, Banyan Vines, Apple Talk, Token Ring, those are the most popular networks. They didn't talk to one another. Internet protocol comes out. Now everyone can talk to each other through TCP IP. Then you build a stack on top of it, right? Then we go 802.3 wireless. You can go, however down the road. And then you go to your video codecs. Back in the day, we would have to download drivers just to have this conversation, but it's the adoption of standards that enabled the adoption and use of all of this. And I see the exact same thing with the automation. I'm curious, how does this work for your competitors? Because everyone needs that secret sauce, but is there a co-opetition term where you're cooperating with industry and your competitors, but you're also competing feature functionality, secret sauce, but still having, so that, like you said, Gasper, you have clients that are using Knapp, they're using manual, they're using competitors, like this ebb and flow. It's kind of not getting locked into, one monolithic best of breed, if you will.
What I do notice is our competitors were not at the GS1 conference. I think Knapp is definitely at the forefront of recognizing this as a problem. The solutions that we're coming up with, though, are beneficial to everybody, right? So for sure, if you have competing equipment with Knapp, but you're acquiring the data that we're promoting, that we're trying to make easier to get to, then our competitors will benefit from that as well. And so I think there is potential there that everybody kind of gets on the same sheet of music. And I know Ries has even had conversations with some organizations on that, but I don't know if there's anything you can add to that, Ries.
No, absolutely. I mean, we've even taken our talks now to large suppliers or manufacturers of products. So that's a world that we wouldn't be talking to 5 years ago. But Knapp has always been a very innovative company. Like we said, we're family owned. We get a lot of free space to try new things and try out things. We fail a lot, but we also tend to succeed a lot on the other side. And this, I think, is one of these ways. To answer your question, I think we're still very much at the beginning. There's definitely sure no cooperation yet. I think there's not much talk going on between large competitors on this topic. I guess I also understand a little bit why. You mentioned that you come from the software side, right? But our companies and our competitors typically come from a steel side. So we like to build steel things. We like to build big shuttle systems, et cetera. And software is only becoming more and more important, let's say, last 10, 15 years maybe. And so the data problem has always been there, but it was just a burden and it was not part of their job. And actually, I also agreed that it shouldn't be necessarily the job of a warehouse manager to get all his data correct. This should be done earlier upstream in the whole supply chain. So, you have people who have to do this as a burden, and they're definitely sure not going to put a lot of effort in it to make it easier for them. They just hope that it goes away at some time. I think talking to GS1, talking to suppliers, making everybody aware that this is an issue and it could actually potentially be solved earlier upstream by certain standards is going to help everybody a lot.
I agree with you on that. And I'm hopeful. I know those conversations are happening, but it also takes time, right? As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it can be destroyed in one day. We've seen that happen. It does. It takes a lot from everyone and a little bit of trust too. So this is very interesting. Liz, I know you had another one. We're running out of time, so I want to keep us going.
I know we're running out of time and we've already really talked about standards. I was going to ask about that, but is there anything that any good stories that you have that were caused by really bad data?
Yeah, none of all. We only have great data, so we don't have
Great data.
problems, Liz. We don't have any problems in our systems. It's like Gasper said in the beginning. These huge systems, yes, they come at a cost price, but they're also extremely complex. Everything in its own, every component in its own is very simple, but putting it all together on this huge scale is making it very complex, and that becomes very sensitive to input data. Give you a couple of very good examples. A depalletizing station is literally a robot that tries to depalletize a pallet by taking off one layer after layer and then descrambling it. And it's using vacuum technology. However, if there's a hole in the layer that is too big or the material is not good enough, then it cannot create vacuum, then it has to push on the side. So most of these robots have about 200 different programs that they can use in order to do that in a proper way. If you get that wrong, if you get that program wrong, then the whole layer will fall down. And we've had that at some occasion with layer of tomato ketchup, glass bottles of tomato ketchup. The product being damaged might not be that big of a cost, but a robot that doesn't work a whole day because you got to clean that up is definitely sure going to cost you a lot of money. Having said that, we see in a lot of automated warehouses in food retail, they have damages up to $250,000, $300,000 a year. That I don't know what the housing pricing is in the States right now, but here in Austria, that's a house. It's a small house every year that you just throw away. And then we have customers in the makeup business, for example, and a box of product that gets broken costs already $100,000. So there's a lot of costs there. We had a situation, well, actually not we, it was with a competitor site where they had, that's a good one too, actually. So a lot of our clients say we have perfect case data on the case level. And then you ask them for the unit level because they want to start doing some e-commerce stuff. And they say, yeah, that's great too. And then they send us a unit level and it's literally a copy of the case data. So you have a can of beer that is just as heavy as a tray of beer. And this customer actually had that problem. It had the weight wrong of the units. So at goods in, the automation system thought that each pallet weighed about 200 tons, which is physically not possible, but that's what the system thought. So it wouldn't take in any pallet. So after 3 or 4 hours, there were 200 pallets blocking the whole goods in, and nothing was moving anymore. Nothing was going into the system. Nothing was coming out, just because somebody put in the wrong weight. This is stuff that you could easily fix if you know what's going on, and it can be fixed way up front. But yeah, this is the sort of stuff that goes wrong then, yeah. And maybe another story on that as well is something as simple as dimensions. You think that we understand that, right? And something could be 300 millimeters long. I have no idea what it is in inches. I also don't know why you guys still use that system, but it's probably something around, I don't know, 10 inches.
Because it makes for good humor.
So a producer that produces that box or a supplier basically has to, make a cardboard printing machine or whatever, a cutting machine, and it says, okay, it has to be 300 millimeters. But then they start gluing them together. That could be done by a robot or by a human being, and then things get a little bit skewed. Then it's transported on a pallet to the warehouse. The stuff on the bottom of the pallet might be more pressed together than the stuff on top of the pallets. So what you actually see then, when you would measure every box in an automated way, which actually is what we do in an automated warehouse, you would see a histogram of value. So you wouldn't see 300 millimeters of length, but you would see 290 to 310. And then you can start saying, okay, so this is literally my distribution. This is my tolerance that I'm going to give my robot. But then you might also have products, and we've seen this with a very well-known drink in the United States. You see a second population pop up all of a sudden. PET bottles in a tray. They were an inch and a half longer. The case was an inch and a half longer than we would expect it. And the reason simply was that there were two producers. So one producer had this mold and the other producer had that mold, which was like 2 millimeters wider. But you don't notice that in the production process. You still sell the same amount of drink, but your case was like an inch longer, right? Or half an inch. Well, sorry, not an inch and a half, but a half an inch. But that's problematic for automation. So here you are, but now we can say, oh, you get it from producer A, well, then use this average value of your length. You get it from producer B, now you can use this. You could call that artificial intelligence. I think it's just good statistics, but you need to get that information somehow. And we're now at a point where we are looking into ways of, could we feed that back to the GDSN, for example, where you could actually fill in the tolerances or change maybe the dimension of the box, that sort of stuff.
Ries, real quick on that, because I had a meeting this morning with a very well-known last mile delivery organization. And they're having similar problems because of what you just described with the case record versus the individual record. And the brands and manufacturers have their data correct, but these bodegas and mom and pops and small grocery chains are not updating. They're updating the inventory count, but they're not updating the actual true GTIN inventory. So can of soda versus a bottle of soda, they both have the same liquid volume in them, but they have different GTINs. So last mile person is walking in, has automated software system. This is what I need to get, scans barcode. It knows the brand is right, the quantity is right, and the barcode comes back and says wrong product, right? So it's like, this is that automation piece. Now, as humans, back to this, the grocery group, I can determine it. It's not a problem. It's the right, but the system is rejecting it and there's no artificial intelligence built into it. Man, we could talk for days, Liz. I know I'm just going to run us right into it because we're running out of time and we're running up against the clock. So I'll jump in. Gasper, we're going to go with you first. We ask all of our guests these two questions, and Ries, you can follow up right afterwards so you can get a little answers to the question. But we're very interested to know, professionally or personally, what is your favorite technology that you're using today?
I'll tell you the technology that maybe I'm not using, but is up and coming right now. And, as I sit in traffic, we still work in the office at Knapp most of the time. And Liz knows, right, because she's in the Atlanta area, but traffic is terrible. And I'm sitting there. I got a 14-month-old too, and she's in the backseat crying, and I'm just stuck, right? And I think autonomous vehicles are going to be really, really cool. And to be clear, I actually am not a believer in the technology as it stands today. I don't think it's ready, but I think in the next 10 to 20 years, as we make a shift that a majority of the vehicles on the road are autonomous, I think is going to be awesome. You get in the car and you can eat your breakfast. Cars will be designed differently, right? And there'll be less accidents, so things will flow better. We talk about the AI and optimization and all that. That's going to play a role as well in making sure that we're able to get where we want to go very efficiently. For me, it's autonomous vehicles. I think that's a super interesting space.
He stole my thunder there.
Ah,
Good one, Gasper. I'm actually a little bit more simple. I just love my smartphone. It's as simple as that. I might not be as far back in time as you, Reid, when it comes to computers, but I have also seen quite some old models, and I've seen it grown. And then you would have a stereo, your first stereo set that you would buy, if you remember that, with a cassette player in there, and you would get a manual of 200 pages, right? And you have to read through everything. Otherwise, you would not know how the damn thing worked. Now we get a smartphone and you can download thousands of apps and intuitively know how they work and what to do without any manual, nothing, neither for the phone nor for any of the apps. So I think this shift from very technology focused to very user experience focused over the last 10, 15 years, I think is amazing. And this is also something I try to discuss here in the company, put it that way.
It truly is. We are living through a human revolution like we all read about, right? The Dark Ages and the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution, like we are living through it, and it is moving faster than any other. My first presentation here at GS1 US with my innovation team way back in the day, 6 years ago, I got up and talked about disruption, and I talked about the record player had an 80-year run before it was challenged. And then it was challenged by the cassette player. The cassette player had a 20-year run. And then it was challenged by the CD. CD had an 8-year run, and then MP3s. And you notice this technology, it's like it just consumes itself so much faster. Imagine having an 80-year run on your tech. It's amazing. You don't see it today.
But still, Reid, you got to stop living in the past, man. Liz, you got to keep telling me that. This is just not good for him.
Ries has been the nicest guy to tell me how old I am. He's like, I'm everyone's as old as you are. He does it the nicest way.
I loved it.
It wasn't even a backhanded compliment.
No,
it was just like
right in your face. I loved it.
I guess that's the Dutch in me. I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I'm typically invited twice to interviews. The second time to apologize.
That's awesome.
We love it. We love it.
Yep. So our second question, and I'm wondering if there isn't a little bit of overlap here, but there's lots of trends and things going on in the world. Is there anything that's been really fascinating to you or that has blown your mind, shifted the way that you've thought about something?
For me, I am so far from an expert on this subject, but I've done some cursory research and I think it's really interesting. But quantum computing is something that's going to be really change the way a lot of our industries work whenever this happens, right? But taking optimization problems that we just simply can't even fathom doing right now, like cracking a password on a computer right now, we could have it take 7,000 years and it'll be done in 2 seconds with quantum computing. So that's an area I'm really interested in. And the more I read about it, the less I feel like I understand it. I guess enough large companies are investing a lot of money in figuring it out. I think we'll make progress and it's going to end up changing. It's going to end up changing a lot. So that's a trend that I'm starting to perk my ears up to.
It's a very exciting and terrifying at the same time when you're really
yes, terrifying is also in there.
The company or country that figures it out first will literally be able to turn the lights off for the rest of the world. They'll be the only ones with a light, but it could also just change everything. But just like the world, when you're old like me and you were back with Confucius back in the day, I'm a firm believer in yin and yang. Firm believer. For everything good, there's bad. For everything bad, there's good. It's the balance of the universe. So it will work its way out. Don't get in a car with a stranger. Let's order up an Uber. So the world balances. All right, Ries, what's blowing your mind?
So thank you for that. What do you want me to add to that? The end of the world? What? Jeez.
No. This is the beginning of a new era.
I'm still kind of skeptical on the whole artificial intelligence thing per se, that is going to solve everything or it's going to be so clever, because I've seen too many times if you put bad data in there, that bad data comes out. I've worked as in simulation area for quite a long time, HPC business as well. And what I think is interesting is that we're producing more and more and more and more data on a daily basis. I think there are some numbers on there as well. Like in the past, you would pass information on with one sentence, like 2,000 years ago, which is a kilobyte. And now you're passing on information that is a terabyte in 5 minutes. But are you really giving more information to the other side? So what I think is interesting is to see if we can figure out how we can actually get smarter data out there. And I think that would work if we start connecting data. What you guys are doing is creating a standard. What we're doing is creating a whole lot of information. If we can bring these two worlds together, I think something really smart can come out of that. I think we can move forward even faster.
I love that. It's really profound, and it's the more beautiful question, right? It was something that was taught to us by the folks over at Disney in an innovation class. You're asking great questions, but what's the more beautiful question to get you to where you are? Because you're right. I mean, we wrote a sentence, transferred information. Now you're getting a terabyte of information, but how much more is really new and how much more is better? Because I'm with you on that. A lot of people are calling macros in an Excel spreadsheet machine learning or artificial intelligence. A lot of artificial intelligence is a black box. There is some really good stuff, but it's just that. I mean, think about it as a human. Growing up, your parents instill ideologies in you, and then you go out and you go to university or you move and you learn others and you change your opinion. A computer doesn't change the opinion. It needs to learn, and it can change, but it's what new data is coming in. Is the data restricted? These are, wow, guys. I mean, what a day, what a podcast, but we are at the end.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Thank you. It's all about connecting data, Reid. It's all about connecting data. Jesus.
In all seriousness, we can't thank you enough for carving out the time, not only today, but throughout the business, because you're helping industry and you guys are really carving a path out there. And we look forward to future conversations.
Would love to. Thank you very much.
Yep. Liz, Reid, thanks for having us. And I enjoyed it. It was a nice conversation.
Thank you for joining the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US. If you enjoyed today's show, you can subscribe to our feed or explore more great episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share and follow us on social media. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.